Hey there, welcome to episode 68 of the Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo, recording midday, just afternoon, on the 14th of June, 2024. Happy Friday, or whenever you're listening to this. Today's episode, why startup in Greater Vegas? That is a great question, one that I ask frequently of myself. I have a particular, I would say two main reasons. Maybe there's three, but you may be asking why startup in Greater Vegas, and so I will give you my opinion in today's episode. By the way, the Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program is focused on the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem of the Greater Vegas area, although the topics discussed could apply to wherever you are, or maybe you're thinking about taking advantage of some of the aspects of the Greater Vegas area and forming a startup here, such that you and your remote team come and visit, which is one of the modes of operation that I have advocated for. An innovation destination, Greater Vegas. You don't need to move here to do business here. That's not a plug. That's just my take. But you might also already live here. So why startup in Greater Vegas? Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you are able to see the episode description. Within, you'll find the show notes. I have two additional links aside from the shameless self-promotion that you may have heard before. The show notes include a summary. If I were to have a guest, it would include a guest and maybe a link to find that guest. I should find more guests. Booking guests is a joy. So let's get started. The summary of today's episode, as written. If you already live in Greater Vegas area, the Greater Vegas area, or if you visit frequently, you may find starting a business of some sort here makes sense. Moving to the Greater Vegas area, specifically to start a business. And by the way, that also includes working for a startup. So moving here to work for a startup or to start a startup of some kind, though, may not be a sensible move, may not make sense. So, yeah, it depends. Depends, of course, as always, most things do. Let us begin with the links. First two links, my usual shameless self-promotion, buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo and Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. I just did some minor tweaks on the buymeacoffee.com profile page that I have there. I'm not totally thrilled with their editor. When you edit the page, the content that is rendered to a web browser, it does not match. We're talking some formatting and some other things. If you create a bullet list in their editor, it does not display as a bullet list in the profile page. For example, there are a few things. So it is what it is, but it does enable me to put some links and tell you about this profile page and the ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. Similarly, these are websites that I don't have to manage or deal with. So they're pretty standard. If you ever use open source tools, or I use Obsidian, for example, to manage my show notes. I'm looking at it right now. Several of the open source plugins have a Buy Me a Coffee link in them. You'll also see a Ko-fi.com link, same deal. So it's not uncommon. That's why I use them. So check them out if you want. You're under no obligation to buy any coffee, by the way. So I use them for engagement and outreach without depending entirely on my own properties, my own websites and so on. Mostly because, as I'm speaking right now, I still have a ginormous to-do list, including publishing websites for Cafe Genius and Quaggling Sand and FFS Talk, and updating the website for Innovate for Vegas Foundation, and building some web apps, and the list goes on. And producing more podcast audio programs, and perhaps possibly adding some video and live interactive with guests and so on. So yeah. Just another couple of items on the list. Check out the projects as you see fit. Again, no obligation to buy anything, spend any money. Although any monies visited upon me through either of these platforms will go explicitly towards coffee, which powers all of my projects. Now then, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has a small business data center. It's a section of the uschamber.com website. It would be cool if the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, let me fix my notes real quick. I had U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Chamber of on small business. Chamber of Commerce is never a government agency. It's usually a 501c6 nonprofit business league. So the .com, so uschamber.com. Their small business data center focuses on small businesses, not necessarily startups, but small businesses. Most startups will begin life as a small business. I always refer to entrepreneurs as people who start businesses or start anything. I may have a more broad definition of entrepreneur. Some people believe it's someone who, I've heard somewhere, an entrepreneur is someone with a good idea and no money. I believe I would qualify for that as well. So, excuse me, had a little throat thing going on there. By the way, if you've heard my shows, any of the 4 different programs I produce, you know that allergy season is at hand. Today my voice is doing slightly better. Hopefully, you tell me. So the data center is interesting. It does focus on small business, so I don't know how much true startup data is in there. But to me, any entrepreneur, any startup, any small business kind of can be viewed through the same lens or a similar lens. These are usually, these require a lot of effort. Sometimes they're powered by passion or long-term vision, true belief in the project or undertaking, or the gap that's being filled, or the goal, the purpose, the mission, etc. So entrepreneurial effort, entrepreneurial insight, entrepreneurial gumption, etc. Yeah, so all these things I think fit together. So I usually think of them as the same. You may argue if you like, but we have better things to do. And the Small Business Association page for the, what is it called? An economic profile for Nevada. So the Small Business Association, SBA, has profiles for the states, and there's one there. And I found I had not actually looked at this until today. I had some idea, but the severity of what I could call, I guess, a disparity is unsettling. So as a solopreneur myself, I can't say that I'm amazed. I also can't say that I'm discouraged, but I can say that the notions that some are discussing about whether this is Hollywood 2.0 or Silicon Valley, the next generation, or however they want to couch these things, it doesn't show up in the numbers, while the fun economy does. So let's get to it. So yeah, I do have those links, of course, in the show notes if you can find them. Eventually, emergency vehicle, if you heard that, production by a street. Eventually, the Cafe Genius website will have the show notes in their entirety, so they'll be easy to find either way. And then I will rejigger, I will republish, I will adjust and tune the show notes as they appear in Spotify and other platforms, so that they are pointing to individual episode pages. It's what we can do to deal with the maelstrom that is podcast discovery. So startups and small businesses are important. As you can see, if you look at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce web page that I'm pointing to, you can start there. I will, let me pull that up. As in, I already have it open. So the U.S. Chamber of Commerce tells us that there are 33.2 million small businesses in the United States. You can see, so this is on the page that I have linked to, so you don't have to drill down into anything. 99.9% of businesses in the U.S. are considered small businesses, and while it is a minority of the total, 44% of the total GDP, gross domestic product, is from small business. 56% is large business. whatever that means. I guess Amazon and Google and all those characters. Tesla, I guess, wherever they got that 56 billion. There is something to be said for small business. I'm a huge fan. I have worked for large business, and I have worked for and been small business. I think the latter is more interesting. Maybe the ginormous salaries for doing questionable things, destroying humanity with social networking, social media. Is it worth the money? I don't know, but I think it's more satisfying to build and make things, solve problems for real, be in touch with the people you are building and doing for and with, and so on. So, small business, it's a thing, but also it is an important part of the economy. So it is a minority, but it's not zero. It's definitely not even 25%. It's more than that, 44, according to the Chamber of Commerce. So, get back to my notes. So Nevada has about 1% of this. If you look at the SBA tables in the second document, unfortunately it's a PDF. Let me pull that one up. And again, I was amazed. I was amazed to see, according to the 2023 Small Business Profile, 312,000 small businesses. So that's 33 million, I'm rounding, 33 million small businesses in the United States, and in Nevada there are 300,000 of them. So that's like 1%. More interesting. Now, I'll flip back to that page. My microphone setup makes the mouse far away from me because I'm really supposed to be talking and not mousing. So there are 33.2 million small businesses and 61.6 million employed by small business. So small businesses are employing almost 2 people per. So that means 45.9% of Americans are employed by a small business. I'm again reading from the Chamber of Commerce page. And it does state right below there, the majority of small businesses, 82%, operate without employees. And those small employers who hire staff employ nearly half of the American workforce. So 18% of the small businesses, 18% of the 33 million, 33.2? Yeah. Employ, half of the American workforce. That's pretty crazy. That's why small business is important. So I guess just the numbers, the law of big numbers, right? So if you have a ton, about 33.2 million small businesses, at some point, some percentage of those will be employing a lot of people total, right, in aggregate. So I myself as a solopreneur, maybe you are too, I employ no one. So that's where those numbers can show up. Now, what I'm guessing they do not account for is when a small business hires a contractor or outsources or otherwise doesn't have a formal like W-2 employee relationship with workforce. So, for example, if you have a it's esthetician is the like if you do hair, nails, etc. esthetician. So if you have a boutique, a store, or whatever, whatever you call that, the business model I understand is you can have a place, a salon, a boutique, a nail place, and people can rent the chair, rent the station, or they basically pay. So that's not a formal relationship, employee-employer, but you are. So that's basically two small businesses. One owns the retail establishment that customers can walk into, and one is providing the service. So it's almost like not a co-op, but it's a cooperation between two businesses. That probably shows up as solopreneurs here. So that's sort of interesting. It's interesting to look into these numbers or consider how they actually break down where you are. So let's flip back to Nevada. So Nevada had 312,702 small businesses, 99.2% of Nevada businesses. So I guess we have a lot of small businesses, mostly. The big businesses, I'm going to assume they're going by business ownership. So, for example, if you look at the Southern Nevada makeup of bigger businesses. They may have multiple fronts, storefronts, or brand names. So Caesars may own several properties, but it may be considered one company. So that's one large company. So all that said, 542,167 small business employees, or about 42.5% of Nevada employees, are employed at small businesses. So that's almost in line with the national numbers, but we do have only 1% of small businesses in the U.S. And then I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. Back on track. So the small businesses, the makeup of small businesses in Nevada is available in the SBA report. But the thing that struck me first was again, that number of small businesses that are solo. I think it's higher than 82%. Let me do some quick math here. All right, came back. According to the numbers that I can find in this 3-page document, I went ahead and added the woman-owned and men-owned and jointly owned small businesses, and then so that came to like 250,000. 250 was it? Divide by 302,000. So I got 80%. I got 80.3%. So just slightly below the national, which is where I would have guessed it was more like 85, but I'm glad I did the math. So 80% of small businesses in Nevada don't employ people, or again, don't employ regular W-2 employees. It would be interesting to know if there's a more contractual interaction, more 1099 engagements, or whether the employee, and well, I'll get to this in a second, but the employees need not be in Nevada. That's something, the U.S., you can be a small business and you can certainly outsource outside of the United States. I don't know if the Chamber of Commerce is including any employee anywhere for any business, so I assume it's all United States. So a W-2 domestic employee in their numbers. But as a small business in a particular state, you don't necessarily need to employ your workforce in the same state. So kind of interesting. So what kinds of small businesses are in Nevada, which is where I'm focusing, especially Southern Nevada? The breakdown of Southern Nevada would take a little bit more spelunking. The local SBDC office is not really useful. That's probably where I would go to find such information. But we have a smattering of small businesses here. So you can see in the table it is, let me pull that back up. It's a lot of professional, scientific, and technology. That's like the bulk. So professional is almost certainly consultancies like me. So as a solopreneur, I would say I'm in professional services, technology, really cool technologies. In fact, LLC, if you're curious. And technical services, yeah, I do technology. Okay, so I'm in the 33,709 small businesses based on the without employees category, and a total of 45,000. So the majority of people in this top, the largest number of small businesses category are vastly solopreneur or no regular employees. And you can go down this table if you're curious. The least or the smallest numbers are utilities. Don't know what that is. Agriculture and forestry, hunting. 885 people have no employees, or businesses have no employees. 3 have 20 to 499 employees. So I'm going to guess that a small business is under 499 employees in this perspective. So that's good to know. Construction is always tricky. It's right kind of in the middle. 14,569 businesses without employees. So I'm going to guess these are subcontractors who are working on job sites. So they hire and fire as needed based on projects. So that's sort of a different business model. It's difficult to count construction and other transient skilled labor as regular employment numbers, but 14,569 small businesses doing construction without employees. So they're almost certainly contractors and subcontractors who just don't have any office staff. They sub everything out, which is fine. That's how that business works. So you can look through the table if you want. It's on the second page of the Small Business Administration economics profile for Nevada for 2023. Very interesting. Small business is a minority fraction of the GDP, but diversity and volume help to resist shocks that can lead to layoffs and failures. So if you have tons and tons and tons of small businesses, like 80% apparently here, if there is chaos, if there's a pandemic or a giant depression or a recession, the Great Recession comes back again, whatever it is, that's not free of problem. There are certainly challenges, and not all of the tons and tons and tons of small businesses will come out completely intact. But when there are many different ways of conducting business, different focus areas, different, as you know, in that table, you can see all different types of businesses. It's possible to attack a setback in different ways to I'll say survive a shock, an economic shock or similar. So small business is a sort of like is a solid foundation, even though the big giant companies, and you can see in the headlines today, big giant companies employ tons of people and they have huge salaries, which are ridiculous. And they're beholden to stockholders, so they have to make their fiduciary responsibility come through for those stockholders, which means laying off people for no reason. Well, you gotta keep the bottom line correct for the shareholders. But there are people who are getting laid off from projects that are still ongoing and still working, really just to trim away labor cost. Arguably, I'm sorry, I'm not sitting in any board meetings talking about this, but big companies tend to have sweeping layoffs. Where again, we're seeing them certainly in the tech sector. Big companies can react slowly to big change. They may have money in the bank, but they don't always react swiftly. And then lingering issues. I mean, look at just the notion of work from home versus RTO, return to office. This has been going on now for years. Small businesses pretty much figured this out, right? Either you already were working with remote people, or you were already working with your local people, but they were working from home perhaps during pandemic times. So now, I'm saving money on offices. If we need to meet, we can do co-work space. We can do executive suite once a month. We can do meet at the founder's house, whatever. There's all sorts of things, much more flexible, much more quick to respond. So small business makes a lot of sense to make for a more reasonably solid foundation for economy and society, right? Entrepreneurialism is usually a good thing. Some creative ideas can come of it. And any small business, if they want to, and if they are lucky, I was going to say if they play their cards right, but we are in Vegas, right? Any small company could become a big company, whatever big company means. Some don't desire that. Some are looking for growth at all costs. I know that is a Silicon Valley notion that seems to have infected people here in Vegas when it comes to the tech scene, which we'll get to. So small businesses employ people, except that we can see that not each small business employs people. So skill set diversity and locality are among some of the reasons to hire local humans, right? You can actually talk to them in person. They can work from home, or they can meet up, like if you can get away with not having an office, but you do want to meet up with your employees, you can do it in convenient places and times, and it can be more flexible. I have worked in configurations like that, and it's okay. It depends. It depends on if the employees have bought into the notion. Some people just like to stay home all the time, and I cannot say that that's healthy, but that depends, and that depends on you also. So we read headlines more and more about the AI-driven layoffs of the big companies. Of course, I just mentioned that. But AI is being blamed, quote unquote blamed, I come down on the side of during the pandemic, there was a tremendous amount of hiring, especially remote employees. And you look at a company like Zoom, which was exploding. It was become essential. Got to have Zoom, and Zoom is sort of just an also ran now, so they don't need nearly the staff. You can look at Google and Microsoft and the usual headline players that are doing just one more, and maybe just one more after this layoff. And they're laying off thousands at a time, and in some cases saying we have growing efficiencies with AI tools and so on. So it will be interesting to see where that comes out. On the other side, you can read that the returns on AI investment as far as utility, that is, you're using AI to perform tasks and maybe to augment workforce. And then when you've augmented your workforce, the ones that are still sitting around with nothing to do now can find the door. So unfortunately for Nevada, the vast majority of small businesses in the state have 0 employees, 80%. Honestly, when I wrote this in my notes, I had not seen the 82% factor in the chamber national numbers. I'm sort of surprised, but I guess not really, because it is easy to start. In fact, I will say this, bonus. You should always start a business. You should always have a business of some sort, and just make sure it's not a hobby from the IRS perspective, but you should always have a business. Tax codes are written for business. You can take advantage of benefits, tax exemptions, tax write-offs, write-downs, self-employment costs and expenses, all that stuff. Schedule C is your friend. Make use of it. But yeah, so 80 to 82 to whatever percent where you are, small businesses are not employing other people directly, which I found interesting. But again, I do think the outsourcing component probably does not show up there. So 1099s, subcontracting, and working through agencies. For example, if you are a small business and you need to hire employees, but you don't want to have employees, you can hire through, Kelly is a well-known one. Adia is what Apple used when I worked there. Manpower, the list goes on and on. There are countless agencies through which you could work as a contractor. So those count as, they may count as big businesses actually. So yeah, the numbers game is always tricky. You'd have to really dive deep in there, but these are telling. Statistics are always tricky though, so we're not exactly sure how they're counting which thing. The highest percentage of employment in the state, for example, in the state of Nevada, if you look at that SBA report at the top, the almost 100% employment of small businesses. Let me look at that again so I'm quoting this correctly. So the share of employees working at small businesses by county is essentially 100% in Lincoln County. 100%. Lincoln County's population is approximately 5,000 people. That tells you that there are no big businesses in Lincoln County and that everyone is working either for themselves or at a small business. A grocery store, a small grocery store, probably no chains. Probably you're not going to find a Smith's there, I guess, or a Vons or an Albertsons. So it's an entire county made up of 5,000 people, roughly. So you can look at these graphs and charts and numbers, but you always have to wonder what are they really telling you? The fun economy will not go away. The fun economy is real. Anecdotally, the recovery from the pandemic shock, as it affected tourism, has been reasonably quick. You can look at monthly gaming revenue numbers. Those are always published. They're, $1 billion a month. It's revenue, but it's still, that's just an example because people are still coming here to partake in the fun economy: gaming, professional sports, entertainment, tourism, trade shows. The fun economy is real. It is not going anywhere. It is, even though there are stated goals and even some legislative action to diversify the economy, the fun economy is really king. There are arguments made that, well, we have the medical school and we're going to have the Hollywood 2.0 studio stuff, and we got Mark Wahlberg. That's usually one of the essentials for a successful economy. How can we go wrong? But the fact is simply this: Las Vegas fun economy is the identity of the Greater Vegas area. So it's not going to slip to number 2 in the next decade, to be sure. The fun economy is not going anywhere. So unfortunately, and again anecdotally, big business benefits more from the fun economy, big business, than does small business, or than do small businesses, due in part to the draw of and focus on the Strip. So the Strip it does have small businesses on it, but most of the attention, most of the marketing, most of the glitz and glamour, most of the video and your YouTuber cadre will often visit the new resort, the new accommodations that they're offering, the new restaurant opening in the resort. That's where your small business might come into play, but the vast majority of attention in the fun economy, in terms of, did you hear that emergency vehicle again? It's focused on the big businesses, the resorts, the entertainment venues, the residences, and so on. So these arguably fall into the big business category. The small businesses don't get the attention that is due, I think, given how important they are. So Formula One, football, hockey, soon baseball, gaming, as in gambling, entertainment, residences, and so on. They're heavily marketed. They're heavily funded. There's a lot of money behind them in general. They get public money often. You can look at the baseball stadium project, for example, but you can also look at the Formula One construction bill and so on. They're an easy destination for visitors to find and return to. So they come to Formula One to see the race. Then they come back to the Strip because they enjoyed their time on the Strip, etc. So it's sort of an easy sell. It's an easy justification of funding and investment in general. So the Strip and the fun economy. Small businesses, on the other hand, often passively benefit from the volume of visitors. Now, if you are a small business operating in a resort, in a casino, you have better access to this volume of visitors. If you are off the Strip, which is sometimes considered to be a good thing, you can see advertised like best restaurants off the Strip, because not everybody wants to hang around on the Strip all the time. But you have to actually be creative to reach people, because by default, many visitors are hanging out in their resort that they're staying in. They're hanging out in the casino. They're hanging out by the pool in the summer. They're local shopping. Now shopping and family-friendly entertainment and diversion is popular on the Strip. So shopping, maybe seeing movies if there are movie theaters around, or other media-oriented entertainment, and so on. So you can, if you're a small business, try creative marketing, social media influencers, especially if you're into the foodies. But still, social media YouTubers are doing a lot of work, walking up and down the Strip, shooting videos 10, 20 times over. Yeah, how many times does one person need to stay in one room? Well, then multiply that by however many creators. You get all. Now, this is probably good for the consumer, but the Strip is only so big. So that's sort of interesting. Not everything is worthy of YouTuber attention and so on. So you have to be creative. And then going off the Strip, sometimes a local influencer will take the time to visit the best restaurants, the best bars, the best hair salons, whatever it is, whatever the small business is. But there have to be subtle means to draw visitors away from the Strip, which is where all the attention goes. I will say for myself, when I was traveling around the world in the maker, innovator space, which I'm still in, sort of, arguably, but working for a big company, I would say I live in Las Vegas. Immediately, they associate that with the Strip, and there would be, oh, I wish I could go to Vegas. I don't live on the Strip. I live in the city of Las Vegas proper, so I would say, well, I live by a school and a grocery store, and I can walk to different places and so on. So there's this vision of Las Vegas as being the Strip, and that's not always super helpful for small business that are not on the Strip. And then you look at specific instances where people running projects here have really not done a great service to small business. And of course, we're looking at you, Clark County, and Formula One construction as maybe the highest profile recently, but there are some other deals going on that are sort of parasitic when it comes to smaller businesses and even medium-sized businesses. That's starting to come out. There'll be more about that over time. The startup scene in the greater Vegas area, unfortunately, the word startup and the word tech are used interchangeably, so that if you are not doing a tech startup, you will often not be welcomed with the same sense. That is, the startup scene may or may not be intuitively obviously found at something called Tech Alley. So there you go. Tech, startup, not the same thing for most people. If you are trying to start a company and it is not tech, then you may not find quite as much of a welcome and as much utility with Startup NV or Startup.Vegas. They are really more interested in the tech scene. If you look at LVGEA, they recently brought on a senior VP, I think it is, of entrepreneurial ecosystem development or something similar to that. The job description and the goals were centered on the number of tech talent, tech employees that are brought to the area, the number of tech startups, the number of exits, the amount of funding, and so on. So it's very tech oriented. So the startup scene and the tech scene, while they may be used interchangeably, they're not really the same, because not every startup is a tech startup. I have told people, now there is this sense that, a startup like Silicon Valley. So I understand where that comes from. But starting up a tech company and starting up your own independent coffee shop are not profoundly different. All right, unless you are, you may be inventing some new software technology, which is fine. You may also be coming up with brand new coffee technology, or there are cronuts, for example. I believe there's one near me that I could literally walk to. These are innovative food establishments. They're not innovative tech establishments. They're coming up with new ways to do familiar things, which is a completely viable strategy for new product introductions. Start with something familiar, make it surprising. Raymond Loewy. So non-tech is not shunned, but it is not favored in the same way in the so-called startup scene. So if you are doing something not tech, you will find community in other places. And I will say the restaurants here in Vegas, and especially bars, so the service industry on the employee side, but bars, restaurants, and so on, tend to be fairly supportive of each other from what I can tell as an outsider. I will say that some bartenders are very highly regarded, and they tend to cross-promote each other, bars and bartenders and so on. So there is a sort of support structure in place for the bar, the food and beverage industry. And of course, the Culinary Union in Nevada is world-renowned for being quite powerful and effective, especially negotiating contracts and timing their strikes appropriately. Unfortunately, service is often touted as essential first stops for aspiring entrepreneurs here in Vegas. And again, I am saying entrepreneurs can be anyone, not just tech startups. They're often sent to SCORE and SBDC. SCORE, I have looked up the acronym, and I don't want to do it again, but it's something retired executives. If you're not familiar with SCORE, you can make an appointment, or you fill out a survey, and they will put you in touch either on the phone or in person with a retired executive, someone with experience and years of it, and in a position to offer their consultation for free. SCORE is a part of SBA, Small Business Association. It's I'm not sure if it's operated as a separate nonprofit entity or what their business structure is, but it's free, and that is initially appealing. Same with the SBDC, and I always forget that Small Business something center, data center. No, I had to look. Small Business Development Center. For some reason, that just does not stick in my head, nor does the complete expansion of the SCORE acronym. I have visited both. I have interacted with both, specifically regarding startup endeavors and efforts to become familiar with them, but also just to see what they would offer for the particular. I mean, I had actual reason to interact, so I wasn't like a secret shopper. But I will say, totally disappointed, across the board disappointed. So half of it was the people that I interacted with, and half of it was sort of the all sizzle no steak. Like, there didn't seem to be the ability. In fact, so I guess I could say it's the people and then the lack of people. SBDC in particular, they offer a number of services, but it turns out, well, we don't have anybody doing that right now. No responses to messages, no interaction really. So SBDC was 100% disappointing in Southern Nevada. And then Score was not great. It was, it was a free opinion, so you can take it as an opinion. It's not necessarily authoritative. It should be insightful. So if you treat insight as potentially incorrect, right? Like the person I spoke to on the first outing to Score several years ago knew something, but had an opinion about what I was endeavoring to pursue, such that his suggestions were essentially, you shouldn't do that. I don't want to go into too much detail, but it was kind of silly. But I took his arguments against as, okay, well, this is what the adversarial side of the world is going to think. So it's good to know. So a Score from that perspective was useful, but you have to go into it knowing that you will be hearing only useless information as far as direct useful advice. You'll only hear sort of evidence or thought provocation. Yeah. So that was my experience also the second time. And I'm using my own anecdotes here, but I have spoken to other people who are equally disappointed and didn't really have an earth-shatteringly positive experience, as is suggested one might have. You got to stop by Score and SBDC. Well, or maybe you don't. But my second outing to Score, I did end up, the person I was speaking to on the phone, the first time was in person. The second time on the phone with someone, the person did not disclose that they were actually, and I found this out by looking them up in the Nevada State Secretary of State has a Silver Flume website, and you can look up business entities, so you can search by name or partial name and so on. So while we were on the phone, he mentioned a separate entity that was sort of related, and I said, oh, it'd be interesting to know if there's a collaboration possibilities, because it wasn't like a direct competitor. But he said, well, I don't know, I can't really go into too much detail, this and that. So he kind of soft-pedaled and backpedaled a little bit the notion that there was this similar entity. So I looked it up, and the person I was speaking to on the phone from Score, who was mentioning this other entity, is a registered Nevada business, and this person is listed in the governance of that business. So he was talking to me as though he were a disinterested resource. I don't believe that was true. So a little conflict of interest, not a major deal, but this is something that should have been disclosed. End of the day, I would not do business with Score in Southern Nevada again, based on these two profoundly negative experiences for me. They were a waste of time. So the core startup scene, in my opinion, based on my non-scientific survey. So it'd be nice. Part of the startup endeavor that I'm pursuing, that I've already talked about in previous episodes, and which I will continue to talk about, concerns rolling introspection of the startup or entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. So the startup scene is somewhere in there. But I would place the number of like real, I'm a part of the scene crowd. I would say it's about 300 people. Why 300 people? Well, because about 120 people show up every month to one event. About 150 people showed up for a different thing. Tech Week, Global Entrepreneur Week. Local participation here is not in the thousands. So for a Clark County population of 2.3 million, if there is a true startup scene here, I would expect to see a couple thousand people showing up if they believe they're in the startup scene. So I'm going to say that 300, give or take, believe they're in the startup scene, and then any other person working in a startup or anyone of an entrepreneurial bent. My favorite quote I heard from someone actually here, I said, "Hey, you never show up to these events." And he said, "Because I'm busy working on my startup." So people that have time to hang out and make the startup scene, I would say is about 300. And I say that because when you show up to an event and you talk about things you're working on, but you have all the time in the world to show up and talk about things you're working on, and then nothing ever really comes of it, one reason could be that you're treating these events as checkboxes to say, yeah, I'm in the scene. And there's an entire fake entrepreneur or fear of missing out or however you want to look at it, notion that I believe is at play here in the greater Vegas area. It's cool to show up and get some free victuals and conversation and maybe get some ideas, talk about your ideas. But at the end of the day, it's very transactional. And I believe the startup scene in the greater Vegas area is in need of a drastic overhaul or just a reboot, just start over somewhere else, a revolution, if you will. So how about entrepreneurs and startups in general? There are several small businesses in Southern Nevada, like 300,000. And a lot of them are solo, about 80%. But bars and restaurants, retail outlets, event venues, clubs, and so on, they're all in an interesting position to engage locals and visitors. So you can engage let's say about half. City of Las Vegas is about 575 to 580,000 people, census data. Clark County is 2.3 million. So if you treat, Vegas as an indicator, say the Strip, City of Las Vegas, so the Strip part of Clark County, the Henderson area, Boulder City, North Las Vegas, say it's half, maybe 1.2 million, say 1.2 million people. There are a lot of people that are out and about doing interesting things. It's more than 300. So you can reach those people and conduct business as usual. But really, the opportunity to engage 40 million, and not all of those people will be entering your retail establishment, but 40 million people have arrived in the greater Vegas area through the year. Those are opportunities to engage people with some novel ideas, some delicious food, some interesting beverages, and so on. So licensing and whatnot can be a challenge. Hang on, let me get to it. Especially if you need to do the health department. If they are involved, there will be a long delay. I've seen just recently an ice cream shop opened very near me. I believe it was ready to go, and I've heard this from various food establishments. They finish up, they're ready to go, and they're waiting on the final inspection so they can get their license. And this can take 6, 12 more months. So this ice cream shop was sitting ready, quote unquote ready. I don't know if they had the reach-ins plugged in, but they were. The storefront was ready. As far as I'm aware, the tenant improvements had been done, and then they wait. So they were waiting for 9 to 12, maybe even 15 months. It's difficult. I can't remember exactly. So they finally opened, and they're very successful. There's a line out the door literally every night. An ice cream shop open till 11 p.m. How crazy is that? In the summer, in the desert. So in that case, their licensing and whatnot, inspections and all that from the Clark County, Southern Nevada Health District, which is Clark County, was a delay. I'm going to assume it was not a pleasant one. And again, I've heard the same story other places. Licensing, if you are serving alcohol, or if you're going to be having gaming, you have to deal with those as well. If you are merely starting your own LLC, or in the case of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, if you want to start a nonprofit in Nevada, the paperwork, in fact, for a nonprofit in Nevada, it will take, you don't have to file any articles. They're already sort of default articles ready to go. If it takes you more than 10 minutes, as long as the Silver Flume website is not crashed, which is a distinct possibility, you can be in and out of there in 10 minutes. If you already have the name of your entity and your governance, if you have your directors, your presidents and other roles and so on, yeah, you're talking 10 minutes, maybe. So licensing and whatnot, what I mean by that is it depends on what you're doing. It can be troublesome, and a nonprofit in the city of Las Vegas anyway doesn't need a business license. So you just need your state license, which for a nonprofit, you're going to be paying $100 to get started and $50 each year for your amended list, or your annual list of who is on your board and all that. Super easy. So on the one hand, storefronts, which are prevalent and probably, there's always a 20% success rate in the restaurant business. The same applies to startups. Those are the hardest ones to start for some reason. and if you want to just hang your shingle out and be a solopreneur and employ no one, it costs you almost nothing, including paperwork and licenses. Small businesses are, in some cases, in many cases, supportive of each other. So I was saying, gotta fix the typo. I have known some people here that with bars or restaurants. There's Tater, if you know Tater. Tater just opened his new bar about somewhere around, I think it was October 2023, so a few months ago, 7 months ago. Wildly popular, probably due in no small part to the fact that Tater is well respected, well regarded. The community of bartenders, service industry employees, restaurant owners, bar owners, etc., they tend to kind of work together, or at least collaborate, cross-promote, sort of co-opetition. It's the nature of the beast, I guess. So some small businesses here in the non-bar and restaurant business, I think, are also supportive, especially if you happen to be in something like the Arts District. So you're generally pleased to see people coming to the Arts District. You are not necessarily sending customers elsewhere. If you've seen Miracle on 34th Street, you know that does sometimes work in your advantage from a customer service perspective. Yeah, go to Bloomingdale's. But in general, from what I've seen and from what I've heard, small businesses here are generally supportive of each other and in a co-opetition, as in cooperation and competition, sort of terrain, marketplace. So nobody's really so cutthroat. Now, if you are a food truck owner, restaurants are absolutely cutthroat, and they would like to see you blown up. So I can't say it's universal across all classes of startup, but for the most part, the small business environment in Southern Nevada is actually reasonable, except for the tech. The tech, I believe, is so new and so unproven and so chaotic, and yet so exciting, so desirable, so envious of Silicon Valley, that is probably misdirecting itself. And the people, those 300 people that are in it, don't really know better. There is some groupthink going on. There is some patting each other on the back. There is celebration by some. There is some sort of apathy by many. Again, I think there are far more, even tech, but far more startup people who would find some value in meeting the people that go to Tech Alley, not necessarily the event itself, but they may find value in those production by street. They may find value in those gatherings and meetups in general. But one of my problems here is that it's a checkbox once a month thing. So there's too much weight sitting on that one event. Again, if you're a startup person and you are pursuing your startup, you don't have time to go to this one event. One event a month is not necessarily easy to pull off, right? You may have just an hour, half hour. You may want to have a directed meeting with someone on Zoom, like here's what we're going to talk about. You may want to have a casual gathering of people in your particular industry, and these are not the scenarios presented for Tech Alley, for example. So I think there has to be a lot of diversity as far as networking, but also idea sharing. Ideation in general is something that could be handled better here. Idea sharing without fear of idea theft. I think that's generally possible. I don't hear too many stories about idea theft. I know if I'm accused of idea theft, I'll shut you down right away because I'm not interested in your ideas. I'm working on my ideas. There was an issue with startup housing here where I was trying to be helpful and I was accused of, and I'm like, I don't want to be in the real estate business. I'm absolutely not trying to steal your idea. No way. Apologies for trying to be helpful. So yeah, there's absolutely nothing to be gained by stealing ideas here, and there's a famous instance that maybe I'll go into in another episode someday regarding 3D printing. That's a different. Didn't involve me, purely spectator. Small businesses do help each other, though, for the most part, in their industry and often across industries. These are all indicators, though, that I didn't finish my thought here. They're all indications that small businesses, and especially retail, and especially the bar and restaurant space, are completely viable here if you can get over the engagement with the tourist hump. If you're able to sustain yourself on local customer base, then you'll probably be okay, because Vegas is a region that does a lot of going out. First Friday, downtown Las Vegas, Fremont Street, summer bands, the Arts District, a lot of fine restaurants and bars and hangouts and so on. So you can do that. So I really think that because there is a reasonably supportive environment, and because there's a certain amount of responsibility that goes with having a storefront, whereas if you're just a solopreneur, you just work from home, that's a totally different environment. And I think finding a similar supportive environment for a startup scene in that mode is a completely different challenge. And despite the percentage, 80% of the startups here are solopreneurs, I'm going to suggest that most of them pretty much keep to themselves. Not all. I don't know what percentage of the 80% keeps to themselves. But I do find that aside from client, what would you say? It's like trolling for clients, right? If you go to network meetings for solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, they're really heavily centered on gaining new clients or taking a class on social media marketing. So I don't find the same level of engagement, and you can call it co-opetition, but it's really more of a sort of rising tide lifts all boats, which is, I guess you could argue, a version of co-opetition, to enable the solopreneur and one person startup that could grow to be the next million employee company. Has there ever been one? The military, government. These are possible, but I think that the environment of supportive, not necessarily support like holding your hand, but just resources and conversations and bouncing ideas off people and so on. And by the way, there's an entire startup here developed by one person, or started by one person. I believe he has a non-employee tech individual for implementation to do exactly what I just said, to engage in conversation with people to try to drive progress for either one or both in the conversation. So these are things that are in their infancy in some cases. But in others, if you own a coffee shop in Vegas, or if you own a restaurant or a bar or a retail establishment or a venue for entertainment and so on, you have, in my experience and from what I'm seeing today, you have an environment of not cutthroat and not necessarily, all springtime and celebration, but it is a supportive environment where you can actually accomplish great things if you are willing to. I don't know if that's being very clear. It's absolutely different from the startup community in the so-called tech startup scene. My observations. The talent pool in Vegas is a challenge. If you have a solo small business in Vegas, you don't have to deal with that so much. But you could be in one of these three things if you have no employees. Also, if you have no Nevada employees. So you could be a small business in Nevada that is actually operating at one or more locations in Nevada, but you have no employees. Oh, I'm sorry, not actually. So the third one is, let me start over. A small business in Nevada is not actually operating at one or more locations in Nevada, thus no employees in Nevada. However, you can form a Nevada corporation, a foreign corporation, and there's actually encouragement to do that because then you're counted in the rolls. If you can somehow contribute to the Nevada economy, so much the better. But you don't need to actually employ anyone according to the definition of many to be a Nevada startup. I've seen, I even saw somebody from the SBDC here compliment a company as being a great Nevada startup. And this was a company with 0 employees locally, 0 presence. Well, they had a potential agreement in place to work with the city of Las Vegas. That didn't happen, so they're really not here. So the bravado, the bluster, the hype over a Vegas startup that's actually based in Israel and Singapore was disingenuous. Still, foreign corporations are celebrated here if they can pretend, even though they don't employ anyone. The small business may be founded and based in Nevada, but retain employees remotely. And this is not uncommon. I've talked to several people who move, they bring their company to Nevada, possibly Southern Nevada, from Silicon Valley or from Austin, because they're looking for a change. They're looking for hotter weather, maybe. They're looking for maybe those people that come to visit, maybe access to 40 million people each year. I mean, who knows? Who knows what it is? But I have spoken directly to people who have all of their employees remote. They're not going to move to Vegas. So a company in Vegas is a Nevada startup or small business, but it has 0 employees based in Vegas, Nevada, anywhere. So still counts as Nevada company, 0 employees. And a small business is an actual solo effort, if that's the case. So like me, if you're a consultancy in tech, or maybe you're doing landscaping or construction or any service-oriented business, so you don't have to produce things, or you could be a solo. There are people who do clothing. They do some foods. Home preparation, I think, is legal here now. Has been for a few years. So you can, cook cookies or cupcakes or whatever and do any number of things. So you're a solo business. You're based somewhere in Nevada, based on your skills. You don't necessarily need to produce at volume. And if you did, you could just outsource it. So then you don't need employees. So these 3 cases of no employees still enable a vibrant startup scene, but without actual direct impact on the economy, which is kind of interesting. But I guess you're buying into the potential that any small business could become a large business and employ people. And also, as I said, if you are a small business with no employees, you're still somehow injecting capital into the economy. It could be hiring contractors. It could be through use of services. Could be paying money to people that do employ people, et cetera, et cetera. Education in Nevada, especially in Southern Nevada, is focused on employment rather than entrepreneurialism. I hope this has changed in the last 2 years. I found some presentations, which I will cover this in another episode sometime. Found a speaking presentation video and some other documentation that the education goals of Southern Nevada, of the Clark County School District and other adjacent agencies, I'm guessing charter, private, the mission is to educate a workforce to work in Southern Nevada. That is not the way you empower entrepreneurialism. It's the way you hire employees, or I'm sorry, you empower employees. They have job skills to work for others. So again, I hope this is changing. There is talk of it changing. There are people who say things. I don't know that they do the things, but slowly, if at all. But from the top, the stated mission again, public education, definitely build a workforce of employees. The entire topic does deserve, though, more focus. And I would like to talk to people from the school district. I will mention that the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program will probably have some stuff on the education project that we had. We kind of started it, and then despite a lot of interest up front from people in the education realm, when it came to asking to do things, lots of crickets, nothing but. Talent is not exclusively derived from education, though, so I don't want to say that you must go to college, although you must go to college. Generally speaking, though, is there a drive to excellence here, derived from education or not? Is it a passion for arts or for creativity in general, or maybe cooking is something you just do? You can become a professionally trained chef, which I think is probably a good thing if you're in the union. I don't know how they treat that, but if you're self-taught, if you grew up in the family business, restaurant, or otherwise, whatever it is, so you don't necessarily need a degree depending on what you're pursuing. the question, though, is that the drive to excellence and whether it exists in the talent population here. I have only found it now and then. If you're looking for bartenders, the Tater I mentioned, Tater would regale me with tales of growing peppers and other ingredients so that he could create his own homemade bitters or other ingredients for cocktails that he was experimenting with. So he took great interest in the output of his efforts. He wanted to see, he would explain how he was making things, the origin story of the ingredients, and so on. So he had a drive to excellence, still does, right? Just open another place. Is that easy to find? Well, again, in the bartending industry, there are a lot of craft bartenders or mixologists. The flair bartenders, I think they're, I don't know. Hopefully they don't do that all the time. But chefs definitely do some great stuff. There's a drive to excellence in some fields, some focus areas, some interesting things come from this drive to excellence and creativity. But let me get some water here. But in my experience, 10 years in, I am not seeing a universal drive to excellence. And when I say universal, I'm saying like 80%, right? 80% of the population, just like the number of solo entrepreneur startups or small businesses, the number of people who really want to do better than people around them. That is a little bit of competition. I'm going to write my code a little bit faster. I'm going to build my product a little bit better so it lasts a little bit longer. I'm going to deliver services that are a little bit more specific and deliver on promises better than, so they're just shining a little bit more brightly in the desert sun. And I just don't see that as much as I saw it in my time in, I hate to even say it, but Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley certainly had a chunk of population that was not driven to excellence, but they were in the minority and they often showed up quickly. So people that are pulling all-nighters multiple days a week, sounds like the voice of experience. People that are like, hey, I want to see this work. I want to see this go. I want to make this a little bit better. I'm going to fix a couple more bugs than I was planning to. I'm going to stay over a few more hours and make sure I commit this thing so that the other team can have it working in the morning. All these things that are part of a sort of a short-term sacrifice for a long-term reward and all that. I don't see that as prevalent here as I would hope. I could be wrong. I would love to be wrong. I always tell people this. If I make an assertion and it's particularly realistic, or they would say pessimistic, and I am proven wrong, I always tell them up front, I want to be wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. I will happily be wrong. Because if I'm wrong, I still win. If I'm right, I don't win, actually. I'm just right. Being right is not all it's cracked up to be. There's no reward for that. So if there's some way to show that there is a drive to excellence here, it's one of the things I listed in my Vegas Lax document, which is in dire need of an update. It's over a year old now. Yeah, I would love to be wrong. Anyway, so why am I pursuing my startup here in Greater Vegas, given these various things? And this is not a complete assessment. There's a 100-page document about the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Nevada that I've talked about many times. I'm in it. I think it's mostly useless at this point. The more you kind of consider how it was researched and assembled, some of the data that was used as part of it, I have a lot of questions, and I don't know that the value I'm looking for would be in the answers to those questions. So why am I pursuing my startup in Greater Vegas? Well, first of all, I've lived here for 11 years. It'll be 11 years August 1st. In fact, so today's July 14th. It would be tricky to move at this point. The startup that I'm working on is based heavily on what I've learned about the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem here, about the way information sharing works, about the value proposition of that here. And almost certainly one of the top things about this area is that 40 million person population of visitors. If you can, there are people that would, if you can make this sound like it's a grift of some sort, like, we can take advantage of the 40 million people with the hands rubbing. It's not that. It's engagement with a population that's diverse and curious in some cases. Like, oh, this cool thing I saw in Vegas. If I was trying to hire talent locally, it would be a totally different story. But because what I'm attempting to accomplish can be accomplished with minimal staffing to start, I don't have to gate my startup efforts on local talent. Now, over time, there could be opportunities to engage with local talent and to have some sort of a small number of employees or have a contractual arrangements with people. But generally speaking, the ability to get this thing started here locally is not a question of hiring. And it's not even necessarily a question of like impressing people beforehand. So this is really about getting not an MVP. I think MVPs are not a great idea in many cases, but version 0.9 beta, as I like to say, getting that up and running to show don't tell will be immensely valuable. And because of my familiarity with the terrain here, my strategy to roll it out and to establish some connections and maybe get some viral marketing is a result of that familiarity. If you move to a new place and you start over, you have none of those things. So part of the value proposition for me in this place is just the fact that I've been here this long. For myself, I also combine my 11 years here with the fact that some of those years were spent traveling for work for a large chip company in Oregon. So I went to many hackathons, many circumstances where I encountered real entrepreneurialism and true innovation, drives to excellence, all these things that we're lacking here. I've seen them. I know they exist. I know what they look like. So I can make that a part of my efforts here to look at cultivating a culture of innovation and what would come of that. So yeah, as long as I don't have to hire locally to get up and running, I think, and my familiarity with the place, these are good things. According to the LVCVA, the Greater Vegas area is getting up to around those 40 million people. They're mostly here for the fun economy, of course. They're not coming here to see the startup scene. Although I will say there are several things that I think the downtown project did correctly. One of them was drawing people to, in that case, the downtown area, but unfortunately based mostly, don't get ahead of me, unfortunately based more on Tony's celebrity than on reality. There were some interesting things going on here, too often classified as a socialist experiment or kind of quirky. So it would have been nice if more of the visits or more of the curiosity was driven by reality than on the celebrity or on the spectacle. So that's something that I would try to do different. If somebody said, here are the keys, give it a go. I would not, though, discount the notion of when people are in Vegas, making sure that they are aware, making sure they have access to the startup scene. And I will augment the startup scene by including people that have startups, people that are small business and so on. I've already talked about the Bring Your Own Water project, which I will not go into detail here. But if inbound marketing, right, you have 40 million people coming here each year. Some of those people are here for a trade show and they just want to get in and get out. Other people are like, okay, I'm here. What is this thing? I'm here for NAB. What is this local media thing going on? What is, I'm interested in media and I'm interested in video or audio or production or content creation or whatever. What in my interest area is going on beyond the Las Vegas Convention Center since I'm here? So directly engaging with people visiting along the lines that they're already interested in, and as well catering to people with particular food needs, special food needs, right, allergies and so on, or particular food interests, making it easier to discover things that are not Instagram. Instagram does some cool stuff, like a lot of visual eye candy and food is eating. I'm sorry, eating is, no, you taste with your eyes first. I think that's what it is. So visualization and showing a nice gooey pizza or a nice latte art coffee or whatever, right? These are obvious. They're showing up all the time. All of our Vegas content creator, influencers, foodies are wandering around town, taking all these pictures, posting them, the 10 best coffee shops. But then you may come across that. You may be able to find it. There may be a link that you can use. You may have to get to their Instagram page. Okay, it's kind of a mess. With a place with so many resources, focusing only on English and Spanish for localization, not being totally down with accessibility, getting around town, it can be tricky. There are opportunities to make use of modern technologies and some new ways of thinking in general, coupled with some of the old ways of thinking. So a variety of possibilities can come together to take advantage of the new ideas that we're pushing and to try them out on the people visiting here and the people who live here. But if everything goes to plan, it should be easier to find cool things as one of the features available to people visiting here. I will remind anyone who's listening who doesn't listen to the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. First of all, why or why not? But we're basing this on two projects, the MyMuni and the Welcome projects. MyMuni is for people who live in a community or municipality, city. The Welcome project is the other side of that coin for people visiting that area. Clearly, Vegas has both. Southern Nevada, again, Clark County, 2.3 million. The Welcome project would be welcome to fabulous Las Vegas. Not an inspiration at all. But people who visit cities or places from other places, they have an intersectional but different need to find out things about where they are as compared to people who actually live in that place. So there is overlap. There certainly is overlap, but they're slightly different, and you should be aware of that. So you can design for that in both cases. We know, for example, the language fractions of people living in the Southern Nevada, Greater Vegas area. English, Spanish, Tagalog are the top three. Unfortunately, most content locally caters to the top two. It should be easier to do that. That's a problem that's been solved. But as far as tourists visiting, the LVCVA may have some data on that, but just assume it's going to be more than those three languages and behave accordingly. Take advantage of some of the modern AI mysticism, but also make use of modern methodologies around maps and charts and timelines and graphs and the ability to connect resources together, connect to those content creators, etc. So creativity in a place like Vegas, you can do so and then try it out with 40 million visitors. That seems to be very interesting to me. In fact, one of these days I'll talk about my other startup where we actually turn that into a process. If you believe that, as I do, most definitely as I do, that chaos is opportunity, then the reasoning becomes clear, especially if one can make use of this opportunity. Literally, chaos is opportunity. If you can make use of this opportunity in the fun economy space, if you can take advantage, and I don't mean that in a negative way, if you can leverage, if you can do something interesting in the fun economy space, which is why people come here, to reach potential customers from essentially the world, why not? And that's the thing. So yeah, why do a startup here? I would be hard pressed to suggest that someone move their startup to Vegas. If you're in the tech sector, if you're doing something, if you're thinking of moving from Silicon Valley to here, be ready to bring all of your employees and hope that they don't have children that require school. If any of those things are true, it's just going to be a slightly less fun initial experience, and then it may get worse for some. So this is another anecdotal, I moved here. I didn't even think that the schools would be this much of an issue. I have two 10-year-olds or two, whatever it is. So if you are coming here by yourself and you want to be a solopreneur here, well, you're fine. 80%. What's one more? If you're looking for access to capital, you may want to keep looking. If you are looking to bring a remote workforce together from time to time and collaborate in the same room, why not have them come to Vegas? Make it an innovation destination, which is something I've been advocating for a while now. So should you do your startup in Vegas? That always depends. Probably yes, possibly no. Again, if I had to hire people, I would probably move. So I know it's a harsh reality, but your mileage may vary. If I was opening a bar or a restaurant, I would love to open a cafe free here. I think that would do quite well. That's different. Hiring coffee shop people to create coffees from around the world. Cafe Free, FREI. Look it up someday. It's in Hungary. You should go check it out. Excellent. I love the idea. It's cool. So a coffee shop like that here would be totally fine. Hiring people would be a different story. But for the things that I'm focused on and the methods that we're pursuing, it's actually easier to try to convince former Code for America Brigade people to contribute to these projects, to open source projects, than to try to look for people here locally. That's the state of affairs here in Nevada. Don't forget my buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo and Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. Keep track of the imminent changes to websites and content and notes that are published where and so on. Maybe some video. I would be interested in a live stream every once in a while. I don't know about doing it weekly, certainly not the daily stuff, but video conversations, real-time streams, and so on. Something to ponder. Audio only is super easy to produce, and I've heard from people that they like to listen now and then when they can, which is fine. That's exactly what audio podcasts are good at, is being there for you when you want to listen. Treadmill, trying to fall asleep, trying to wake up, etc. Maybe sitting in a meeting bored. So yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for telling your friends. And you don't have to buy me a coffee, but if you want, you go ahead. That's it. Thanks for listening. Happy Friday.